Before we get started, I would like Arjun Deepak ji to start us off with our mantras.
Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurme Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Arjun ji. Namaste, everyone. My name is Nikunj Trivedi, and I'm the president of CoNA, or Coalition of Hindus of North America. We are a grassroots advocacy and civil rights organization dedicated to improving the understanding of Hinduism in North America and working on matters impacting the community. We have been around since June of 2020, and we have truly been honored to have a lot of support in the community over the past 2.5, almost 3 years now. Some of the campaigns that we have been working on besides the current Caste campaign have been our global swastika campaign, where we have been developing materials as well as creating opportunities for people to understand the difference between swastika, which is a symbol of peace, and the Nazi symbol, which is called the Hakenkreuz, or the hooked cross. We have also opportunities for Hindu parents to learn about their culture, but also engage with their students and their kids in a meaningful manner through the Hindu Parents Network. Similarly, you can find additional opportunities and projects at www.CoNA.org or CoHNA.org. You also are welcome to join us, become a volunteer, and join the grassroots movement across the North American sphere between the US and Canada. So you can find, once again, more information about us at www.CoNA.org, or follow us on @CoNAOfficial on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today's webinar is going to be focusing on the recent Caste the Caste policy that has been passed by the city of Seattle. We're going to be talking about kind of on-the-ground report of what happened there. What are some of the reasons behind the policy that has been passed? What are the implications for the community? And what should we really be considering, and how to really think about this as a sort of an important moment that has happened this particular week, and the repercussions of this for the community, and what the next step should be for us to think about this collectively. So with that, what I would like to do is introduce Suresh Krishnamurthy ji. Suresh ji is on the CoNA board of directors. He's been an activist for a long time, based out of Atlanta, and has been a key part of our board in terms of framing these, the discussions around caste, but also providing opportunities for people to learn about this very complicated topic. So he'll start us off, and then we'll come back to additional speakers as well. So Suresh, please go ahead.
So I'm sharing my screen. I just want to make sure.
Yep, it looks good.
It's good. Okay. So namaste, everybody. I would like to make sure that this entire presentation is based on the fallout from the Seattle Caste resolution. So what exactly is going on here? In an executive summary format, first of all, this movement is extremely well organized with a very standard playbook, a playbook we have recognized from other movements elsewhere. The other big note is the Hindu community is not prepared to handle the coming onslaught, and it is going to be an onslaught. There is certainly a dangerous sense of, I am not affected by it, so why should I care? There is a sophisticated propaganda that's being employed. We'll show you some examples of how that worked out in Seattle and what kind of language was used. It is our determined conclusion, based on everything that is going on, between what has been happening at various campuses and this new legislation that has been passed in Seattle, that Hindu Americans are facing a very real threat from a very well-funded campaign. And it is also our conviction that it is going to take great unity of purpose among the Hindu American communities and among our allies in other communities who will be able to stand with us in order to defeat this kind of activity. If you notice on the right-hand side, I have a little tweet. I would treat it as the vultures are already gathering. We have JP Diol, who has basically said, I'm admitted to practice law, would love to be the first to litigate such a case on behalf of someone discriminated against on caste. Now, why does that affect us? In terms of background, just so we keep everything clean, and we're all on the same page. What exactly is it? It's an ordinance that has been passed by the city of Seattle. It is referred to as CB 120511. The ordinance basically adds caste as a protected category along with race, sexual orientation, and other classification of protection. This ordinance has the power of law. Although there is no real way to say what the penalty might be. It could be a fine, it could be a lawsuit, it could be anything. The ordinance was voted on after bypassing the usual committee scrutiny. The entire process took less than 2.5 weeks to go from proposal to actually being voted on. We find that to be suspicious, to say the least, but clearly the normal committee rules were bypassed. They used an obscure part of the Seattle city laws governing the passing of legislation to kind of fast track this through. And they picked a date for the committee, for the council meeting that was literally after a long weekend, deliberately, in our opinion, to make sure there was not any unified opposition to the bill, or people really didn't have a chance to discuss what's in the bill and whether it makes sense. How will it be enforced? Well, the ordinance can be used to file lawsuits alleging discriminatory behavior. The ordinance also directs funds to be allocated to monitor compliance with the effects of the ordinance, effectively saying the city of Seattle will appoint somebody to investigate the prevalence of caste among South Asians and only South Asians in Seattle. The paperwork says about $287,000 is being allocated to this, which is roughly 5% of the Seattle of the budget of that group, of the civil rights group within the city council. The Seattle Human Rights Commission is required to study problems arising in the city that may result from caste-based discrimination. So what exactly is the reason, according to the city council? They declare that caste is a system of rigid social stratification characterized by hereditary status, endogamy. This is a definition that is being picked out of places like Wikipedia, of the Webster Dictionary, and it is using what we would call essentially a Western definition of caste. It also declares caste discrimination manifests in employment, education, and housing. There's not any evidence of this, but that is a claim that is made, that's being made here. Caste is found in many industries, it says, and is a grave contributor to workplace discrimination and bias, as though it happens on a daily basis. And caste identity is inextricably intertwined with those legally recognized characteristics, which basically, it's just legalese to say, we don't quite know where to classify caste, so we're just going to claim that it is everywhere. So the question is, who's behind this and why? The primary driver of this is an organization called Equality Labs. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be. And several other organizations that usually are sometimes or often on different cross purposes with Equality Labs. So the question then becomes, okay, why are all these groups joining together to propose and support a legislation like this? The best analogy we can show you, we show it to you in a couple of pictures here. In the forest, in the plains of Africa, when a large carcass is found, the scavengers that show up under normal circumstances, they're opposed to each other. But when they find a large carcass, they come together to feed off of it. It is our firm conviction that the goal of all these organizations is to turn the great Hindu religion into a carcass that they can all feed off of. Today, they are coordinating their efforts deliberately in order to basically shut down Hinduism as a religion. And we will have a lot of evidence on that going forward. So as the second picture shows, which I think which we feel is very apt. Vultures don't have strong enough beaks to tear through the elephant's hide, so they have to wait in line behind the hyenas. There's a pecking order that is being followed. So one organization opens up a front and another organization joins in. But the goal is always the same, is to go after Hinduism as a religion. So with that, let me turn it over to Shobhaji. She was on the ground during the vote on the 21st, and she has some observations to make. So Shobhaji.
And Shobhaji is our General Secretary. So thank you very much, Shobhaji. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Namaste, everybody. So I was there in Seattle, flew in from Atlanta to Seattle to support on the ground Seattle team there, which is a very set of very brave, bold, and courageous Hindu Americans that have been fighting this battle repeatedly in the Seattle area. So even though their numbers had diminished a little bit because of previous experience, they showed a brave front, and we all marched in early in the morning at about 6:30 to line up outside the city hall, even before the doors of city hall opened. And the staff of Kshama Sawant had provided for heaters, and they had anticipated that we were going to show up, so they were already up there. And at 7 o'clock, the doors opened to the city council, and we walked into the lobby. And from then on, we waited up until 12 o'clock. But in the meantime, as they gathered, we had our placards and banners, and they had theirs as well. But we could clearly tell that there was a vicious and a propaganda-driven agenda and attack, and the kind of words that they used, their slogans themselves that you can all see on social media. And it was all to intimidate us, to put us down, and to basically make sure we vanish. But we persisted, and we were about 23 strong. Everybody who took the day off from their, work week and came in there.
Your voice is cutting off. We can't hear you.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, so sorry about that. I'm having some technical issues with my computer as well as my phone. But moving on, we all lined up, and we were looking forward to entering the chambers. But before that, they had what is called a march. They had a mic set up, as well as, speeches planned right there in the lobby of the city hall. But we were given no such privilege, and not that we wanted to address a crowd such as that, but we made sure that our voices were heard and our presence was heard. So we had our own chants and slogans as well. And just so, their voices were diminished and couldn't be heard over our slogans. Once we went into the city hall, we had a whole slew of series of, all of them made sure that they got somehow ahead of us in line. And they were all called one by one, so also us. And it was an intermix of the calls on the phone as well as from our side. But the general theme of the rhetoric that was narrated over and over again by each one of those that stepped up to the podium was filled with bigotry, filled with hatred for us, and recounting instances that were really not present. When we questioned a couple of them as to, what kind of caste discrimination did you face? Where did you face such a discrimination? They had nothing to say. They were, tight-lipped about it. They had nothing specific to say, but you could tell that they were parroting what they had been taught in terms of what they were to repeat and what they were to step up to the podium. They had pre-prepared statements to make, and some of them who were more eloquent had written out their own speeches. But there was a slew of people from Equality Labs, from various other organizations, all across maybe the Seattle area and otherwise. So it was a very emotional and a vicious attack on a minority community such as ours. And we want to really appeal to the local Seattle community to come forward to be, active participants in this, in terms of watching out for future city councils that may be subjected to the same kind of ordinance and such. So it was a very gut-wrenching and a very harrowing experience for each of us, but we put on a brave front and we were given a certain number of slots to speak, not as much as they got, but we nevertheless put up a brave front, both on the phone as well as in person. And as you all know, what the outcome of this, the election was. We also had approached the city council several times through letters, through emails, through phone calls, and the members, but we never got a chance to present our case to them, our viewpoint from the Hindu American standpoint about this caste ordinance. But we did email a rebuttal on caste to them that every one of the council members received. And so you saw what Sarah Nelson spoke up, and she told us in an interview right after the elections were done that she was an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist, and from her background and from her education, she saw that the ordinance itself and the tenets that it proposed did not bode well with her, did not sit well with her. It didn't agree with her conscience. And that is one of the main reasons that she voted no on that bill. So we had one vote that was a no, and that was from Sarah Nelson, that it didn't really sit well for her. So
Shobhaji, on that note, I think, thanks for that update. We really appreciate that. I think the big takeaway on that was there was a contrast between the way the yes vote, the group supporting the yes was organized, and the way the opposition was organized. There was definitely a big difference in ratio. As Shobhaji was saying, there were almost 100 people from that side. So key observations, they stayed on message. There were very large numbers of them. They were well funded, well coordinated, particularly with the bill sponsor. There was a lot of communication going from Kshama Sawant to the people who had come to speak on it. And more importantly, they had a very, very good understanding of the process. They knew exactly how it worked. We had the energy, we had the passion, but we were still, I don't want to use the word outsmarted, but we clearly have some learning to do in terms of how to combat the situation going forward. And yes, we were certainly late to the game because we found out about this bill. This bill has largely been moved in secret by people who are predisposed to supporting it. So thanks, Shobhaji, for that update. I'm going to turn it over now to Nikunj to talk about how are we going to face the next one, because this is not the first. This is not going to be the last.
Yeah, and in fact, this has been going on for a while. Seattle becomes the first city in the United States, but this is going to go national. We have already seen that. We have seen the opposition essentially saying that, we have now won in Seattle. Let's take this national. Even Kshama Sawant herself said the same thing. So this is definitely going to go national. We have been observing and following these trends for a while. I would say that where this playbook has been around for a while. So take a look at where the CAA resolution cities were, right? That's been the pattern. Kshama Sawant was one of the first, lawmakers who had introduced the CAA, anti-CAA resolution and got it passed in Seattle. So it's the same type of players who are being behind it. So looking at that, cities with a strong tech company presence. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that's where a majority of the quote unquote, I would say efforts will be focused on. And we will see that happening across the different parts, especially on the West Coast, some cities on the East Coast. And then you can have small, sort of more liberal type of cities with safe majorities where you can essentially pass this without any kind of resistance, because either the city council has been influenced by years of, I would say, just engagement or quote unquote brainwashing, or they have had significant voter blocks or funded their campaigns, etc. So there's a lot of leverage on these city councils where they can safely say, we're going to, no matter how much opposition comes in, we will be able to pass this type of a law. And remember, I want to remind people again, this is not a resolution or a proclamation. So it doesn't have any impact. It's just more media blitz. This is an actual law, folks, we're talking about. That would literally have an impact on you, whether it's sentences or fines, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something you have to really keep in mind. The ultimate goals here are to encourage lawsuits against the so-called upper caste folks, whether you're talking about truly upper caste or how you define all that stuff. We will talk about that a little later, but really to encourage more and more lawsuits against the sort of the Hindu American community, essentially. It also wants to force companies, essentially, to capitulate under the whole idea of the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, and include caste training as part of that, and make a whole lot of money behind this. So, sometimes with companies having large budgets, they would rather just, include this as part of their anti-discrimination policies rather than worrying about like fighting this and so on and so forth. And then essentially piggybacking on the current DEI wave that has been sweeping the country, going in saying, okay, we also need to include caste as part of the training. And this has already happened, by the way. So it's not like it's going to happen at some point. We have already seen these types of trainings happening in certain tech companies for sure, but also certain financial companies, which I was quite surprised about. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to perpetuate the divisions rather than unifying the society. So a lot of the Hindu community members, for example, including CoNA, have been working on unifying the Hindu society and truly having a platform where Hindus of different backgrounds can come in together. As you can see, Aldrin Deepakji, who will talk about his experience a little later, is part of a national steering committee. Just like that, the idea is we're trying to unify, but this is going to create more divisions within the society, within the community, and divide the community along these types of fault lines that we have already seen in, for example, back in India or back in other parts of South Asia. So that's really the goal here, ultimately. So are we really prepared? How are we going to do this? Are we really prepared to take this onslaught that is about to come in front of us, which has already started in some of the universities and now coming into actual cities where it becomes law? So
I'm going to play that. I'm going to play the video.
Yes,
this is a very short video from the presentation from the signing yesterday. So let's make sure.
Did you turn that clip on? Did you turn that video on?
I did. Yes.
Truly ending discrimination has required mass movements like ours, and we would not be here without this movement. And ultimately, it requires ending the capitalist system that bases itself on brutally exploiting and dividing the working class and the poor and profiting off discrimination and oppression. So when they say that this ordinance is divisive, no, this ordinance is actually away from divisiveness and division. It is capitalism and its oppressions that divide humanity, and we want to end that division. We need a fundamentally different kind of society based on equality, solidarity, and democracy, a society run by and for working people, not the billionaires. In other words, what we need is a socialist society.
So there you have it, folks. That is the exact objective stated by the sponsor of the bill. She wants to destroy capitalism and replace it with socialism.
Yeah. So there's a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of packaging there as far as we're concerned. So the ultimate goal here is to create that division and destroy the sort of the idea of capitalism, which has been our platform for a while. So
Nikunji,
let's talk about So now let's talk about moving from there into kind of what the actual propaganda has been around this. So I want to start off with the left side of the things. Over the past 2.5, 3 years, and even longer, since I've actually been in, for more than 2 decades, we've been seeing this type of propaganda, where, for example, Equality Labs, the main organization that has been behind this, that has been drafting these resolutions, has openly said in March of 2020 that Hindu festivals such as Holi are casteist and violent, that celebrate the burning of a Dalit Bahujan woman. Now, the falsity of that whole thing is there, but the fact that an organization is openly calling sacred festivals as violent and where men throw semen at women, that is just completely horrible and unacceptable, number one. Number two, they have also supported dismantling of Hinduism, and we have the evidence for it. We have provided the tweets to lawmakers, to city council members, to university professionals and academics and administrators, to showcase the real face here. Similarly, Hindu symbols and practices like yoga need to be rescued from Hinduism because they are actually not Hindu, They silently, perpetuate oppression in the name of yoga, in the name of meditation, and therefore they need to be. Any organization that stands against them, that is opposing these types of caricaturization of our sacred traditions, our sacred deities, etc., are branded extremist right wing. And then ultimately, the only way you can get rid of this type of inequality, quote unquote, in society is that Hinduism must be dismantled. Okay, and this is in no no small terms. These are the types of sort of dangerous rhetoric and dangerous activism that some of these organizations are involved in. Now, the other part of it is what they're saying is that not only Hindus have issues in India, for example, they are bringing these casteist ideologies anywhere and everywhere they go, in wholesale. So it's not one person, but the entire community is bringing their entire casteist ideology, aka Hinduism, wherever they might be. But while there might not be any visible markers, we have seen this type of a sort of conjecture. Okay, for example, certain academics, talk about this, and then of course organizations like Equality Labs and many have talked about this. How do you ascertain a caste? Okay, well, you look at the last name, your skin color, your village name, who they hang out with, what kind of questions they ask, whether they are wearing the sacred thread or not wearing the sacred thread. These are what they call visible caste markers or identifying. Even though there are no visible caste markers, they try to essentially create a framework of what a casteist person may look like. So all of a sudden, my last name is Trivedi. All of a sudden, I am considered a casteist because apparently I'm a Brahmin. Whether I identify myself as a Brahmin, whether I wear a sacred thread, whether I'm vegetarian or not, it doesn't matter. But again, these are the markers by which anybody who identifies as such is a casteist person. And by the way, vegetarianism as a lifestyle is considered caste discrimination. Not only is it considered caste discrimination, it's actually considered violent vegetarianism or militant vegetarianism, as we will see a little later as well. This was one of the quotes from the actual testimonial where they said that Jainism or the Jain tradition or people who are Jains are following militant vegetarianism. So this is the type of, yeah.
So Nikunji, why don't we just go to the tape on that one? Let me just
exactly. Let's do that.
Let me just play the clips.
Yep.
Jain by birth, which is infamous for a militant form of vegetarianism, to such an extent that everyone and everything that's deemed impure are ostracized and barred from being touched. I am married to a Dalit woman. My wife is not yet protected from my own family's discrimination because caste is not a protected category in the US.
Okay, now that was one person saying that he was going to use this ordinance to force his mother to like his wife. I mean, this was, and we're not making this up, right?
Next one.
For example, a cousin of mine refuses to eat in outside restaurants because there may be food cooked by people of other castes and she considers it impure.
So if I choose not to eat outside, so for example, during COVID, when we were really not eating outside, a motive is ascribed to us to say, hey, you're not eating outside because it may be cooked by somebody of a different caste or whatever.
And therefore you're casteist.
Therefore you're casteist.
Because of caste discrimination, I have been ridiculed for being meat eater.
Because of caste discrimination, I have been ridiculed for being a meat eater. So when we talk about, this is the evidence, this was read into the records of the City Council of Seattle as evidence of caste discrimination, that somebody felt that their wife was being mistreated by their mother because of caste discrimination. So
and vegetarianism.
And vegetarianism. So this is a classic case where propaganda just meets absurdities, where people have really no idea what constitutes discrimination. And the city of Seattle, which ought to know better, is going along with it.
Yeah, and let me finish on a different note, but a related one. Here's on the right side an actual flyer that was actually passed around during the protests. Basically, it says ban caste discrimination. Which side are you on? Okay. On the left side, they showcase a bunch of 175 total community and labor organizations, including all the people that apparently Arundhati Roy is an organization. I didn't realize that part, but apparently she is. Cornell West is also an organization, apparently. But hey, you know what? Who cares? Let's just put all of them there. On the right side is where the propaganda starts. Who's opposing caste discrimination? Now, look at the organizations that are put there. They have a big block of Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and the entire block reads about how Vishwa Hindu Parishad is responsible for human rights violations, killing of minorities, blah, 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 just an entire wall of information. And then you have three other organizations at the bottom: Hindu University of America, Hindu American Foundation, and CoNA. All three are considered right-wing organizations that are supporting the Hindu nationalist BJP. Okay, so this is the type of propaganda. So essentially, when this flyer is given to some city council member or someone in the media, it goes to show that there is really just a bunch of Hindu right-wing groups that are doing this. And by the way, Vishwa Hindu Parishad was not even there in that sense. So there's a whole different ball game that they're playing here. But regardless of that, what they completely disregard is the fact that 113 plus Hindu, Jain, non-Hindu organizations, two Dalit groups who are Hindu Dalit groups were all part of a coalition that opposed this caste discrimination policy. Okay, so that they don't show. Of course, this is exactly what propaganda meets absurdities, but how propaganda was pushed on the day of the vote itself. So we just want to kind of share this type of real critical information. Next slide.
Jain by birth, which is infamous for a
Cousin of
militant
mine
form of
refuses to eat in
vegetarianism.
outside restaurants.
All right. So what does it all mean for people of the Hindu American community? So we wanted to make sure we spend some time on this. These are real threats that Hindu Americans are facing, particularly if you're in Seattle area, and they're being constructed by evidence that is essentially sleight of hand. So, for example, anyone of South Asian origin is vulnerable and in legal jeopardy because the ordinance repeatedly makes it clear that caste is South Asian. And then there was a lot of protest, and there was somebody must have pointed it out to them. We did, but others did as well. It's saying, why are you singling out Hinduism? Then they came up with a quick-fire amendment that expanded the definition of who might be casteist to include everybody from literally Japan through Southeast Asia, through South Asia to Africa. Now, notably missing was obviously Europe. The irony is, of course, the word caste originates from the word casta, which of course is Portuguese. But in any case, as it stands, this legislation covers caste as a problem ranging from Africa to Japan, right? There is no objective definition of caste, only a vague notion of practice. So they talk about there are multiple preamble clauses that try to describe what caste is all about, but essentially they're quoting Webster's dictionary. Now, as you will see in the upcoming videos, Kshama Sawant, the sponsor of this bill, she freely admits that the purpose of this ordinance is to encourage lawsuits against bosses by workers, which is perfectly in line with her philosophy, which is that of a socialist. She has made no secret of that. But now she is using caste as a wedge issue to try and get people to sue their companies, sue their bosses. And you'll hear her say it in her own words. And the basic claim is that the Cisco lawsuit, the lawsuit from on Cisco by CDR in California, is evidence that caste discrimination exists. So they're making the argument that mere evidence of a lawsuit means caste discrimination exists. So you put two and two together, and you inevitably come up with four. One side of it says you have to create more lawsuits. The second side says lawsuits is evidence of discrimination. What does that mean? What it means is I don't really have any evidence of discrimination, but because I think lawsuits are an evidence of discrimination, I'm going to encourage people to file more lawsuits so I can turn around and say, yeah, see, all these lawsuits means there's discrimination. An entirely self-fulfilling kind of argument, which of course is absurd nonsense. But At the end of the day, it's now the law of the land in Seattle. So what kinds of sleight of hand have we noticed? Well, on the one hand, caste is rigid stratification. Once you're born into a caste, you can never change. But simultaneously, it's also self-identified. We challenged one of the council members to declare why this would not result in people being asked what their caste was or declare their caste, carry papers. And she was like, no, people just self-identify. Well, but if you self-identify, how can it be a rigid stratification that is impossible to change? If it is based on last name, why is it that Tenmari Soundararajan, whose last name is a Brahmin last name, can declare herself to be a Dalit? Where is the evidence? And what kind of standards are we talking about? They also claim that it will be prosecuted without asking for the caste of the plaintiff and the defendant. This is like claiming I will prosecute a racial bias case without knowing the race of either the plaintiff or the defendant. It's absurd. And these are statements that are made in open chambers. They're basically saying we have no data, but we need this law so people can sue to collect data, like I was mentioning. Caste has no visible markers, but last names are caste markers. So let's go to the tape. Let's listen to Council Member Kshama Sawant.
Wage. I had corporation after corporation had the nerve to come into our office and say, you care about black and brown workers, poor workers, low income workers, but really, let me tell you, if you pass $15 an hour, you'll end up hurting them because you know what the code, what they're really trying to say is that we might stop employing people who are of low income backgrounds. And first of all, that's a really vile threat. And second of all, none of this ever happened. In fact, $15 an hour lifted 100,000 workers out of poverty. And what we will get if we win this ban against caste discrimination is genuinely empower caste oppressed workers and our movement to fight to win lawsuits in the courts against massive corporations and corporate executives like in Microsoft, IBM, Google, Facebook, and so on. The list goes on.
And as the list goes on, let's see how she intends to persuade these corporations.
Wage. I had corporation after corporation. Be clear about the details. The main power of this historic law, if we win today, is the private right of action. In other words, the right for caste oppressed workers to bring a discrimination lawsuit in the courts. So yes, the department should be investigating. They should have enough funding, but that is not the real issue. The real issue is we need this law on the books so that legally caste discrimination is outlawed, so that law can then be used to take it to the courts. And we have no illusions. Winning in the courts will also require a movement. It's not, our work will not be done here. We will need a movement to win anti-discrimination lawsuits in court. And a lot of people who have opposed this legislation have said, well, we need to explain it to the corporate guys. They don't understand caste. Of course they understand, but they have no interest in doing anything about it. And I was asked earlier today, I was asked, but don't you want to educate the corporate bosses? And my response to them was, the best way of educating corporate bosses is win a lawsuit against them. That will educate them overnight.
So this is what we are up against, folks. We have the sponsor of the bill who's openly saying the whole point of the bill is to encourage lawsuits from people who may be feeling caste oppressed. How would they define caste? Well, they use Webster's definition of caste. Do they have any standards for determining if somebody is oppressed or not? No, it's self-identified. Do they have any idea whether or not somebody was actually oppressed? No, they just felt oppressed. Okay. So if we are concerned about the ramifications of this law, you can see why. Okay. The Hindu community needs to understand exactly why this is such a problem.
Be clear.
Now, some of the evidence, let's talk about some of the evidence that has been posed. So let me talk about Cisco, and then I'll hand it over to Nikunj to talk about some of the other issues as well. Now, many of you might have heard, and you've heard it almost endlessly repeated in the press, that the Cisco lawsuit means something bad was going on. The New York Times made no secret of it. They actually wrote an op-ed piece where they said the technology giant got away with ignoring persistent caste discrimination in their company, as though the New York Times was right there in Cisco. In October 2022, this is part of the ordinance that was passed in the preamble. In October 2022, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing won an appeals court ruling to proceed with the lawsuit. The lawsuit is proof that there is widespread caste abuse in tech companies. What exactly is the reality? That case has been going on for 3 years. After 3 years, there has not been a single word of actual testimony that has been offered in open court by either party. Let me say that again. Not a single word of testimony in open court. So what has been happening for the last 3 years? Well, there have been a lot of technical motions. The first motion was whether or not this should be subject to arbitration. The second motion was whether or not the plaintiff could remain anonymous. Those two went to the Superior Court. The Superior Court ruled on them, and now they're back to the original court. Hasn't changed anything other than the fact that we now have settled a couple of procedural matters. In December of 2022, if you look at the actual court documents, there was a proposal to completely dismiss the charges against the defendants. Let me be very clear. There was a proposal in recorded testimony in court that the CRD was considering dismissing all charges against the defendants and simply coming to a settlement with Cisco. The court has not even heard the demurrers being a legal term for the defendant basically saying there is no case here. The court hasn't even heard that. They haven't ruled on the demurrers. They have not even looked at it. The case is currently awaiting mediation between CRD and Cisco to be completed before June 2023. So it's on hold while CRD and Cisco try to figure out if they can solve this without even coming to court. Notice that the defendants are not involved in this. Okay? And there's an action pending before the judge to sanction the CRD for continuing with the case in the face of incontrovertible evidence that there is no case. That has been accepted by the court. They haven't ruled on it yet. They haven't heard it yet. So the idea that somehow this case is evidence of caste discrimination at Cisco is absolute nonsense. And I would say that, and I say that very bluntly. Anybody who can follow the documents, the public documents filed in the case, knows fully well there hasn't been no argument, no decision, nothing concerning the actual material facts of the case. Will they ever come to court? We don't know. If the mediation is successful, the whole case might be dropped. If the mediation is not successful, who knows where this will go? So we just have to wait and see how the courts rule. Okay. So if anyone, if people on the call, if you want to know how you want to respond to somebody who comes up and says, oh, but isn't the Cisco case proof that caste discrimination exists? We have to remind them that we live in a regime where we are innocent until proven guilty. Here, the defendants are being pronounced guilty even before there's an argument. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. This is just fact, easily verifiable by anybody who wants to go to the court system and look at the actual document. So let me turn it over to Nikunj. He can talk about the Santa Clara County and CSU.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap up on the Cisco part, what's really interesting is most people don't know that in this whole scenario, there's a Brahmin and a Dalit painted, and there's basically two sides of it. There's a Brahmin who discriminated against Dalit. But what's interesting there is that the so-called Brahmin person, actually all the top 3 positions in his entire team, entire department, were given to the Dalit person, essentially. Okay, so knowing the fact that the person was Dalit. Similarly, millions of dollars of sort of awards, cash, whatever you want to call it, compensation was also given to the so-called Dalit person. So there's a lot of interesting things that are in the Cisco case that I highly encourage everybody to read on your own. We can't cover it today. You can go to this website that was created by some community members called www.castegate.org or .com. I'm forgetting but we'll send it on the chat box. But in there, you'll find a lot of inconsistencies and sort of government abuse of power when it comes to targeting of the Hindu community. And we see that in some of these institutions on the top left side. So for example, there was an attempt in Santa Clara County to add caste as a proposal, as a protected category. a lot of Hindu groups came together, and including diverse type of groups, not just Hindu groups from one so-called quote-unquote upper caste, but a diverse coalition of groups came together and successfully defeated that proposal, because the county realized, after lots of presentations made by CoNA and many other Hindu organizations, that this is going to be way too complicated than what they are used to thinking about. Like, oh, there are only 4 castes, and we can adjudicate this based on just someone declaring a caste. So there's a lot of complicated things. I want to make one thing very clear. We, CoNA and other organizations, but I'll speak for CoNA, we categorically stand against discrimination of any type. And we want to work with people who think that they face discrimination. As you can see in our own leadership team, we have a diverse group of people from different backgrounds. So, we as a community are willing to work on those things, but that is something that we are working on. It's an issue that we will tackle, but at the same time, we do not need outside laws to make a special category out of us and say you require special monitoring. So let's move on. Similarly, CSU, Cal State University System, added as a caste as a protected category. But as you know, there's a constitutional challenge. There's a lawsuit that has been filed against Cal State University about this, and we'll see where it goes. Interestingly, Brandeis University was the first one to add caste as a protected category. However, in the last 3 years since then, they have had not one single complaint based on caste. They also acknowledged that existing laws are sufficient, but adding caste is a good thing in order to just make a statement in today's environment. In fact, this was also said by UC Davis and Cal State University, that while we understand there may not be any data out there, we just still want to go ahead and add it. Okay, so there are a lot of these interesting things, and all of this, the evidence behind this has been the Cisco lawsuit, has been the flawed survey by Equality Labs, which was called out by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace as well. So there's, and of course, a strong anti-Hindu sentiment by these hate groups that continuously blame Hinduism for all evils in the world. So Hinduism is the root of all these evils, and that evil has then spread into other religions. Not even kidding you, this is how the language is in these types of resolutions. So I encourage you to take a look at some of these resolutions. You can go to CoNA's website, cona.org/decolonize, to find our rebuttals to some of these, sort of like cases and things like that. So now, is it a good thing? Yes, but you cannot just ban something or outlaw something on non-existent data and just some arbitrary definition that can be challenged very easily. And these two government bodies have been credibly accused, as you can see with lawsuits and also websites that have dedicated and gone through court documents, that they have abused power to intimidate the Hindu American community. Next slide. So now we, come to this point, are we right-wing? So I want to kind of just, I've been talking about this a little bit. What I would like to do is just remind people that we have people from all backgrounds. Our national leadership, our national steering committee, as well as our board of directors, contains people from different backgrounds. And we do not like to use these categories because nobody, when they came to CoNA, nobody said, hey, by the way, are you a Brahmin? Are you Shudra? Are you Dalit? Are you Bahujan? Whatever, right? Nobody asked that. And we are truly caste indifferent. Most of the people who came, and I'll share this anecdotal story, and Audrey will speak next. But let me tell you a story. After this whole Cisco debacle happened, one of our board members, stood up one day, and she said that, I must confess something. And we're like, yeah, go ahead. What would you like to confess? She goes, I'm a Shudra. And we were like, just like, why are you talking about this right now? She's like, well, I don't want to talk about this type of a category because I don't identify myself like that. But because of what's going on outside, I had to make it clear that I'm a Shudra. I'm a proud Shudra. I'm a proud Hindu, and I'm proud to be part of CoNA. And that board member had the courage to then go on and talk about her quote unquote Shudra background, because she said that nobody should dare to tell me I am lower than anybody else, because who the hell give you the right to adjudicate that? So with that, I want to give it to our steering committee member, Audrey Deepakji, to talk about his experience. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Audrey.
Thank you, Nikunji. So sad that we are all gathering here to talk about these horrible things when we could have just met to talk about the wonderful thing that our collective experiences have been. But unfortunately, we are here because of that, so we have to talk about it. Just two things I want to talk about from the Seattle thing. There was this one person was talking about how militant vegetarian. I want to understand that word, that phrase, militant vegetarian. I went through in my mind over and over. I don't think those two like have anything in common. And this person also said that his mother is not treating her his Dalit wife so well. I'm so sorry for the wife, but it's your problem. It's obviously there are people in your family who are ignorant, uneducated, and not willing to think about other people. That has nothing to do with any Hindu that I have met for the last 35 years I lived in America, or the 19 years that I've lived in India. So my experience, I know Sanskrit today because somebody who knew Sanskrit who taught me. I was taken care by a person who is not related to me, who was a friend of my father, who is a Dalit, who she was a Brahmin. She took care of me, and I had no connection to her. And all of my friends that have been around me were from, we never asked each other ever which caste you belong to, either in India or here. So these things just, it's all made up so that somebody's career either can advance, or their own mind, however that is formed, whatever the ignorance or the prejudice that they have, they're projecting other people. And it's a sad thing. I wish I could tell you, I had that experience so that it could be true, but it's not at all true. And the worst thing is, in America, kids who grow up here, they don't know anything about India. Most of them don't even care about learning anything about India. Forget about caste. You know, there are over 5,000 castes in India. How are these Indians who are living in America are learning about this caste? What are they going to have, like a metric of a melanin tester in your body so you can say who is a Dalit, who is non-Dalit? I mean, what nonsense are these things that they're bringing? So the thing that I have problem is I have gone to temples, I've gone in people's like intimate pujas that they have done. Nobody ever asked me before I enter their house, oh, wait a minute, I want to make sure that you belong to our community, so this is okay. This kind of thing does not happen. And this is what the sad part about it is. So if already laws exist, if you're going to add this as a category, it only tells me one thing, that you in your subconscious somehow still think somehow Indians, especially Hindus, are not people who we can trust. And this is the problem. You know, I don't go to a sushi restaurant because I do not like raw fish. That does not make me a racist or a prejudice for that particular people who eat that. This kind of things, see how quickly that they bring this kind of argument and make people feel, it's almost like, oh, I never thought of it that way. These are the things, you know, like my partner, not once has ever talked about this. Today, he was very upset when I told him that we are recapping this. And he said that this is so ridiculous, even it's making me mad. And I think that's what we want. We want people who are not involved in this to understand this. And the only way that we can do is speak our experience and tell them what is going on in America and be honest about your experiences. And, you know, I do talk to certain people who are in the background, are willing to talk to me about their experience. And none of them have had any bad experiences, but they're afraid to come out and speak about this. But I think we cannot do that anymore. We have to come out and speak. It's not just about us. It's about younger generation and the people who are coming ahead of us. So we cannot be sleeping anymore. We have to wake up and be part of the community that has given us so much, that has given not only in this country, but in order for you to be who you are. So I trust that we have a responsibility going forward to make sure that we expect other people to join the fight and make sure these kind of nonsense don't happen. because that's what they're counting on, that they cannot imagine what is the reality as compared to what they want it to be. So we have to show them the reality. And that's only my few words.
Thank you very much, Albanji, for those kind words. We really appreciate your participation. You've been a rock that we can lean on. Your comments have been very well received. So we thank you for your help. So from a CoNA perspective, our goal advocating for Hindu Americans is very simple. We work for a real end to caste. We judge people by the strength of their character, not by some magical classification based on a last name, skin color, tone of voice, or dietary preferences. The organizations that are pushing this narrative, in our opinion, are hoping to feed on the corporate and taxpayer money. So there's been a lot of questions on the Q&A as to what do you think their end game is. In our view, their end game is to position caste as this complicated thing that needs protection from, and then go to the DEI budgets and say, well, guys, now you have caste as a protected category. Obviously, you don't know anything about caste. Somebody has to educate you. And guess who's going to do that? We are going to educate you on what caste is. Oh, and by the way, please cut us a big check out of your DEI budgets.
In the case of,
it's been in many years of corporate practice, I've always found the rule, follow the money. And in this case, if we follow the money, that is where we believe it is clearly headed.
yeah, and we have already seen that in Santa Clara, the Seattle Department of Civil Rights basically came out and said that it will cost us $285,000 to implement this policy, right?
So
and who's going to?
Yeah, they're going to hire a full-time person and then allocate another $100,000 to consultants.
Right.
And
exactly.
who knows what's going to happen in the future. And by the way, they've also added a definition into the resolution, into the ordinance, which talks about redefining what counts as an artistic organization. I was scratching my head trying to figure out why would that be part of this ordinance until it hit me. Equality Labs is an artistic organization. That's how they've built themselves. So the ordinance is already paving its way to make sure that Equality Labs, which is quote unquote an artistic organization, qualifies for certain monies that will be distributed to make cultural studies or whatever it is. So we'll watch it in the future, but that's where we think this is going. So I just want to take this opportunity before we go much further. We're coming up on the 10 o'clock mark. I'd like to answer some of the questions.
Before we go there,
yeah.
Let's quickly go through some of the scenarios. If you can move the slide to a different slide.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no worries.
There we go.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of end to this as a Hindu American. I want to understand, what does this mean for you? Okay, why do we really care? We talked about a lot of important things, but I want us to understand, first and foremost, how does it impact our kids? Okay, now let me give you an example. According to the Cyberbullying Research Center, 23% of kids, Hindu kids, are bullied in school simply because of their religion. And caste comes up as one of the biggest slurs used against, besides curry breath and you worship weird gods and goddesses. These policies and resolutions can really amplify the risk of bullying, prejudice, and trauma for the kids. They may face that in school or in college. And then, of course, caste discrimination, the whole idea of caste is because of the school textbooks and stuff, is deemed as an intrinsic part of their religion. Suddenly, one's religion, aka Hinduism, is blamed for all kinds of social evils in the world. And all of these policies have been implemented because of the idea that Hinduism is intrinsically violent and oppressive, okay? Whether it's in schools, government bodies, universities, etc. And of course, if you are a child of an Indian origin parent, you may be by default called, children of the casteist parents who discriminate against others, and basically an adherent of a religion that sanctions discrimination or hate. So this is really, really something that our kids face even today. And we have had some, Hindu Parents Network we've had some testimonials of kids who have actually faced this. Now let's talk about employees and sort of entrepreneurs and things like that. Why would a company decide to hire a person of Indian origin? Because the company is now going to be concerned about how they will implement caste policy in their workplace practices, in their hiring policies and things like that. So employees may be hesitant to hire people of Indian origin. Okay, you'd rather just not do it versus getting involved in implementing a policy which you have no idea about. That's the safest route. An Indian origin manager now is looked at suspiciously because of their caste, or because of the idea that somehow he's going to be discriminating against other Indian employees. So if you're a manager, you are at a very, very high risk of getting sued in this particular situation now in Seattle. Let's talk about if you are if you're an HR person, how are you going to basically determine who's upper caste, who's lower caste? Are you going to keep a roster? Are you going to keep a sort of a book or create a list that the British colonizers had done to adjudicate, okay, this group of Indians is actually bad because they're upper caste, and that group of Indians is good because they are lower caste, et cetera, et cetera. How would you do that? Are you going to have a rule book? Are you going to have a training essentially of all the different Indian castes? And by the way, that's just not Indian castes. They're Pakistani castes, they're Bangladeshi castes. How are they going to adjudicate this? If you're an entrepreneur, again, you will be concerned about hiring people who are other Indians. Potentially you get sued. Let's say, for example, if you're a 7-Eleven owner, you decide that you're going to hire someone, or a motel owner, you're going to hire somebody. Let's say you hire somebody who has a different last name, and then you let them go, and they turn around and sue you, not because of any other discrimination, but because of caste discrimination. You probably did not check their caste when you hired them, but you know what? You just got sued. So entrepreneurs have to be careful. So if you're a small business, if you're a motel owner, if you're a 7-Eleven owner, you could be a gas station owner, it doesn't matter. Then let's talk about academics. So if you are a professor, welcome to reality. So your student may sue you because you decided not to give him or her enough time, or they may sue you because they got a bad grade. And I'm not kidding you, because there could be a fake complaint filed against you. Now remember, the complaint doesn't have to have any merit, but what the social media headline will be, thanks to certain anti-Hindu organization, the social media headline will be that XYZ professor of Indian origin accused of caste discrimination. So your entire career is at jeopardy just because somebody accused you of caste discrimination and filed a complaint against you. Number one. Number two, if you decide to spend less time with one particular kid and more time with another particular kid, not because you thought that the other kid wanted more help, but because you wanted that kid to have more help because he was weaker in his academics or her academics, now all of a sudden you could be accused of caste discrimination. All right, let's talk about Indian campus bodies. Somebody, and this has happened at UC Davis back in November of 2021. Indian and Hindu campus organizations who talk about Hinduism, who talk about sort of culture and things like that, they may have policies. They may say, you know what, we're not going to allow meat, or we're not going to allow, let's say, alcohol or whatever in our, that's their personal preference. All of a sudden, they could be sued, or not sued, but they could be reported as being casteist. Let's say a Hindu campus organization has a body of officers where somebody was, quote unquote, high caste and somebody was, quote unquote, low caste. And the quote unquote low caste person was somehow said, you can't be part of this organization because of X, Y, and Z thing. That person can turn around and say, hey, you did not let me become part of this organization or part of the officers, the board of directors or whatever, because I'm a low caste. Okay, so and if what's really interesting is people think that I'm kidding you, and this is actually happening. This has happened on campus where a University of the UC Davis organization put out a statement that basically urged people not to celebrate Diwali, because Diwali is a celebration of violent gods, Brahminical gods and goddesses that should be shunned. This is actually a student organization at UC Davis that sent out this message on Instagram discouraging people to celebrate Diwali on campus. So this is the reality. Now, what's really interesting here is how are these policies going to deal with parents who are from different castes, or people who are from interreligious marriages, or people, for example, a non-Hindu marrying a Hindu, let's say a white guy marrying an Indian girl, or Indian guy marrying a white girl, or black girl, whatever it is. What about their kids? Okay. Similarly, what about non-Indian Hindus who have adopted Hinduism, for example, whether it's in the U.S. or from other parts of the world? What happens to them? So this is what is coming to everybody, and this is what it really means for us to keep in mind. Now, as if I was kidding, Suresh, is there another slide, or this is the last slide?
No, this is the last one.
Okay, so the examples that I was giving you earlier, I'm going to read two important examples. So Harvard Graduate Student Association added caste as a protected category. Here's a clip from the news when it was covered.
Do you want to
Gopalan, now I have the clip here. Gopalan said that after the provision was approved, Dalit students began to come forward with their own experiences of discrimination, including by South Asian supervisors and instructors who would give their work less attention than that of upper caste students. Okay, let me repeat that. South Asian supervisors and instructors would give their work less attention than that of upper caste students. I wonder how they decided that. Was there somebody standing outside of their office that said, okay, let me write it down. Are you upper caste? Oh, well, okay, let me note it down. Are you lower caste? Let me check your last name. Let me check your dietary preference. And now let me see how much time the professor spent with you so I can figure out, oh yeah, my work was given less attention and your work was given more attention. Similarly, UC San Diego, and I'm not even kidding you about this, their ethnic studies department has put out a policy. Here's what it says. We understand that caste supremacy is sidelined as caste privileged people continue to circulate simply as people of color. Attending to complexities of race, caste, and religion, we intend to recruit Dalit and Muslim student faculty and students in the coming years. This is an official statement by the UC San Diego Ethnic Studies Department about how they think about caste discrimination and what they want to do in their hiring practices. Let me quote that again. We understand that caste supremacy is sidelined as caste privileged people continue to simply circulate as people of color, which means all of us are hiding our caste supremacy by saying we are people of color. We are brown people and we are being discriminated. So our discrimination is sidelined, and basically we are gaslighted by saying, hey, we are all caste supremacists. And then, of course, attending to the complexity of race, caste, and religion. So there is a complexity between race, caste, and religion. We intend to recruit Dalit and Muslim faculty and students in the coming years. So if they're going to recruit Dalit students and Muslim faculty, they're clearly saying that caste is connected to Indians and Hindus only. This is actually the case at these universities. And if you read the ordinance, the original ordinance in Seattle, you can clearly see that it was blaming Hinduism and it was targeted towards South Asians. Only after pushback and they started to see that the Hindu community is coming together and pushing back, they added Japanese people, they added like Southeast Asia, they added Northern Africa, all of these people to make sure that, oh yeah, now the caste is a problem in all of these, but there is no data available to do that, okay? So just to kind of end on that, we are very, very serious about the situation that we are, that our community is facing. As a Hindu American, as a community member, it is our duty to understand if you fall in any of these categories or other categories that I have on the screen here, please bear in mind that these policies, while it's sitting in Seattle and somebody sitting in New Jersey or somebody sitting in New York, somebody sitting in Texas is saying that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to be impacted by this. Well, guess what? If you work for some of these companies that are based in Seattle, potentially you could be impacted, because the easiest way for them to do it is to just include caste as a protected category if they're anti-discrimination policy. It's very easy to do. It just, it was going to go through without kind of any votes and things like that. And it just makes their jobs easier. Okay, so don't think that it's not going to impact you. Oh, I'm sitting there and this is the case and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to worry about it and all that stuff. It's going to have an impact on you.
So what I have on the screen to round this out, this is a legal note that has been produced by this company called Fisher Phillips. They provide legal advice to companies. And in that, they are basically talking about what does this mean? They talk about caste being a complicated and fluid term. It talks about 4 varnas. And then it says it extends to Christian Muslim communities in Japan, Middle East, Nigeria, Somalia, Senegal, et cetera, and here is the kicker, right? The full extent of caste as a statutory term for Seattle employers thus remains unclear, adding to the complexity. So what should you do? Well, you basically don't know what you should do. Essentially, it is saying you should be prepared to consider caste in performing disparate impact analysis. This is 2 days after we are literally 2 days into when this ordinance became a reality, and this is what we faced. So let me take this time to answer some of the key questions that came up during the Q&A. One question, and I'm going to kind of combine them all. One big question that a lot of you have been asking is, can we do something legally? So I have two, as CoNA, we have two answers to this. One is, we are not going to discuss publicly what our legal strategies may or may not be. So clearly we're not going to do that. But the second thing is, I would like to clarify, in the United States, you cannot challenge a law until it actually becomes law. Today, since the mayor hasn't yet officially signed it, this law is still not necessarily in place. So even if we wanted to, we could not sue. So if and when it becomes law, we'll deal with it. The second question, related question was, can we do something to stop it? Theoretically, yes, the mayor can choose to veto it. Other things can happen. Is the mayor going to veto it? We don't know. We have no idea. People are welcome to write to the mayor to urge him to consider a veto by all means. His email address is freely available. It's bruce.harrell@seattle.gov. People are welcome to write to him politely, please. If you're going to write on behalf of the Hindu community, let's be polite and request that can he please veto it, or at least send it back or do something. So we have to wait and see. The legal actions take some time. They have to be done very carefully, patiently, and they take their own sweet time. As the California Cisco case has shown, 3 years, not a single word of testimony. So let's just keep that in mind as the benchmark. The second question a lot of people have asked is, what can we do? Well, first of all, you can become involved. You can join CoNA, you can donate, because all of this takes effort, it takes money, it takes a lot of resources. And if someone who's on today, if they donated whatever they can to the cause, to CoNA, we would be that much better off to challenge the next such proposal. And we know that's coming. We just don't know where, but we know it's coming, right? So feel free to join us. Come join us. Donate to us, become a member, become a volunteer. We can talk about all kinds of opportunities that we have in CoNA. But most importantly, get involved. This is not something that is going to go away because we kept quiet. This is going to eat us if we keep. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to scaremonger or anything of that sort. I have been in this country for many decades, and this is the worst I have felt, where I see it as a real threat. So it's important for everybody who's on this call, send the message out. If we are being alarmist, we are being alarmist for a reason. Join us, spread the word, be prepared to push back, based on facts, but above all, educate yourself on what's going on. Get involved in the civic, get involved in your local, in your homeowners association if you have to. Talk to your city councilors, talk to your educational systems, talk to your principals, find out where this wind is coming from next. Let us know and help us fight this. So those are the two big things you can help with. One is you can help financially. And the second is you can be our eyes and ears on the ground and see what's going on and let us know when you see something.
Also, Suresh ji, please cover that it's probably coming to some cities around Seattle. There is a pattern to this, and I think the Seattle on the ground Hindu Americans are predicting there is going to be Redmond City next and a couple of others listed. So we got to watch out. Could be coming to a city near you as well.
Yeah. So our objective in putting this webinar together is to put the facts in front of you. There's nothing here that is not backed up by solid data. Okay. So we want to put the facts in front of you. We want you to think about this. Think about what you just heard. We want you to kind of figure out, what would you do if this came to your town, to your neighborhood, to your school, to your college, wherever you are? What would you do? Because it's coming. So let me turn it over to Nikunji for some final words, and then we can go from there.
So, yeah. Suresh, just to answer that, And would you, maybe Nikunj can answer that question. What would you do if it came to a city near you? What would we answer to people? What would be our answer?
Yeah, first get in touch with us. That's the first thing. Send us an email at info@CoNA.org. We have been working on this for a while. We are also connected to other organizations, so naturally this there. If you know local Hindu community organizations, do get in touch with them as well. If you're not able to get in touch with us, that's totally fine as well. Be the change. Essentially, you have to get involved because this is going to be in your neighborhood. It's going to have an impact in your kids. You may say, you know, I'm older, I don't really have any kids. Well, what about your kids' kids? What about your neighbors? Anybody, you know, if you care about your culture, you will do something about it, right? It's very simple. You know, if we don't say the fact that the opposition has been able to make such an impact is because they've been working on this for decades. They're well organized, they're well funded, and they have a very clear agenda. Make no qualms about it. So we need to be clear on what we want and how we can be organized. And we take inspiration from our texts, our gurus, our leaders, etc., to rise up and stop not until the goal is achieved. And that's what Swami Vivekananda would do. That's what we are doing. So we encourage you to get in touch with us. That's the first thing. The second thing is organize locally. Okay, it's okay if you can't, if you're not well articulated, etc. We'll be able to help you write some memos, write some articles, write your context. There's a lot of resources on the website. There are other organizations that are also working on this that may have additional resources. So first step is to get in touch, and then we can try to help you as much as we can.
And we can guide you through the process as well. How to reach out to council, how to reach out to your mayor, what would you say, what kind of script to use for your templates. All of that can be helped. Yes.
And if I can add one quick thing, that
Yes.
please stand up for your what you believe in and what is the right, what is dharma, right? And if you don't stand for something, you will fall for everything. And you have to have courage to say, not again. It will not again. It will not happen again. And we have fought too much and we have come too far to go back into our little places where we think, oh my God, I'm afraid of it. This is our country. This is our rights that they're taking away from. So we have every right to fight back and we should not be afraid. And please tell your friends and family and educate them as well. So if you need more material for that, CoNA has it. CoNA has a wonderful program for parents and children, and also to understand what your tradition is all about. It has a wonderful program. Please do get involved.
Thank you.
Yes, agreed. So again, you know, we ran for a while. I know this was a very engaging thing. We had about 260 people actually join the webinar today. Really want to thank everybody for joining. You know, get in touch with us through www.CoNA.org. Donate, volunteer. You know, be part of the change. Be part of the movement, because only collectively, you know, the four of us here, or the, you know, our entire team can't do it alone. We can't be everywhere. What we can do is collectively work on these things and make sure that we stop this at the Seattle level only, and it doesn't spread across different parts of the world. I mean, different parts of the country, essentially. We can only try and leave the rest to Bhagavan's lotus feet. And, you know, that's all we can do for our dharma. So I really want to thank everybody for joining tonight. And I hope you found this, you know, insightful. We will be posting this recording once we edit sort of parts of it, and it'll be available on YouTube. So if you signed up for the Zoom webinar, we will be sending you a link once the editing and posting is done. Thank you again. Namaste, Shubhratri.
Shubhratri.
Namaste, Shubhratri.
You can stop sharing, Suresh.
Recording stopped.
All right. I think that was good.
We still
I'll end it.
We still have about yeah, the people are dropping off right now.
Yes.
You can wait till everybody
Yeah.
leaves.
No, that's fine. I can remove it because we're done anyway. So.
Recording stopped.
We still have about 40 people.
Yeah, I know. Some people raised their hands, but I think we're gonna end it, so. I'm gonna have to start removing because, you know, it's gonna take a lot of time
Yeah, you can just,
since the webinar's ended anyway, so.